G'day all, I'm Jones Goode and I'm joined today, it's my absolute pleasure to be joined today by the Godfather of Perth Pro Wrestling, Davis Storm. Davis, how you going?
I'm great, mate. Yeah, beautiful day here down at the Empire Ballpark.
Empire Ballpark, Dave. Can you tell us, you brought me here on a beautiful Sunday morning. Why have we ended up at the Empire Ballpark?
It's a place that I now have a lot of attachment to. Do a fair bit of work down here at the ballpark, working for Diamond High Performance. So, this is something I obviously have a strong interest in, and this is kind of where my future is.
And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. Look, we know about your storied career in wrestling, and look, we'll get to that, and particularly your match coming up against the Dom. But I really want to start with, outside of Davis Storm, the wrestler,
Yep.
What drives you? What motivates you? So let's start with, what are you actually doing outside of wrestling right now?
So strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer primarily. Spend a little time doing vocational teaching as well, which has been really satisfying, like a great area of growth for me this year. And then part-time footy coach, mate. Certainly, much like many things in my life, an unpaid gig, but something I've got a lot of passion for, and something I'm hoping to pursue in the future.
But let's not undersell it. I mean, the Empire Ballpark is the house of some, or the home of some elite sports people.
Sure.
Similarly, I understand you're doing some work with the Freo Next Gen Academy as well.
Yep.
Are you attracted to that elite side of sport?
Absolutely. Although I'll also say, while I am attracted to elite sport, I suppose the thing that I'm most focused on, and it's been something I've focused on throughout the years with wrestling. It's carried on to footy now and also my professional career. I suppose I'm most interested in people being able to maximize what they have. And that's something that I've focused on with myself and my journey in wrestling. But then also just my personal development over the years as well is, it's less about necessarily being the absolute best. There's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be someone fitter, someone stronger, someone smarter. It's become, for me, over the years, more about maximising what you can get out of yourself and what you can get out of the people around you.
So what does that actually look like in practice? How do you get the best out of yourself?
I mean, for someone who has struggled with attention and commitment and discipline, I mean, every school report you would have looked at said the same thing, mate. Dave has a lot of potential if only he could focus, and if only he could commit himself and not get so distracted. These are things that have plagued me throughout my life. Wrestling was the first thing that I was really able to center myself and focus on. I think a large part of that is it was a really physical endeavor. Over the years, academics, I've been relatively strong in academics, but the second it got hard, I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
As a young fella, not having the right mindset and being at a level of playing tennis where I was on the periphery of the state team, and I felt like...
Was that your first exposure to elite sport? Was it tennis?
Yeah, absolutely. And at that age, the only two things I wanted to be was a basketball player or a wrestler. But tennis was the thing that I'd kind of committed the most time and energy to. But not having the right mindset, that I felt talent-wise, stroke for stroke, shot for shot, I could go with anybody in the state. But the second I'd get into a competitive environment, the winning and the losing took over, and it crippled me on the court. I suppose for me now, trying to realise that, there is always someone who is better, but we sometimes aren't able to perform our best, to be our best, when we're worried too much about how we compare to other people. And for me, over the last 24 years, wrestling has really taught me to just focus on the things that I can do and not focus on the things that I can't do. So just trying to control the controllables, as they say. It's very boring stuff. You hear footy coaches in particular talk about process over everything else, but that's really all it is trying to get as much right each day as you possibly can. And not every day is going to be the best day in the gym, and not every day is going to be the best day in the ring. and just being able to keep the train on the tracks as much as possible, to be disciplined wherever we can. And this is where, for someone like myself who's been diagnosed with ADHD very late in life now, I understand I work best when I have structure. I need checklists. I need things to continue to keep me accountable and keep me on the right path.
So you said you were plagued by these things earlier on in your life. So how did you I guess, and then you mentioned a change in mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the practical steps that you took to achieve that change in mindset?
I'll be honest. I don't think it was anything particularly intentional. I think it was just the path of, EPW has been a blessing for me, that I was not a good leader and I was not prepared to be a leader at the stage.
And how long ago are we talking here?
So we are talking 24, 25 years, before EPW actually opened its doors. When the two groups came together, the small group that I had, which was Explosive Coastal Wrestling, which is what eventually became EPW, there were about 4 or 5 of us on one side of the river, and then north of the river were XBWA, which was a backyard wrestling group up there, which had about another 10 or 12 lads and we all managed to find each other on the internet in those early days.
So you're saying at that stage you didn't have the right tools to achieve or to reach your greatest potential? Is that?
No, I don't think so. And but being I was the most driven within my group in terms of wanting to see wrestling. I was probably the most passionate about wrestling at that stage. And then the other group that we were meeting up with, they were all on the younger side. So most of the lads were only 16 at the time. So I kind of got pushed into this leadership role of just, I was the most committed on my team, and I was just a little bit older than some of the guys on the other side. And it pushed me into a position where I had to lead from the front.
And having been pushed into that leadership role, do you think you were ready for it at that time?
No, absolutely not. And you watch Tough Enough or something like that. You see the bully style training and the hazing that goes in with professional wrestling, and you think that's what a leader is supposed to do. You think a leader is meant to be uncompromising and is meant to be tough and is meant to be able to get through any circumstance. And I suppose that's how I tried to model myself, was on trying to be tough, on trying to make people earn their place within EPW and within the professional wrestling industry. We were, I think, trainers everywhere in that time frame of the early 2000s felt like we were the gatekeepers of professional wrestling, that we were in that stage of the doors being thrown open and almost anybody being let in through the doors of the training centre, and we felt some sense of responsibility to the industry. I don't think we always went about it the right way. And in hindsight, I can now say, if I came into the industry 10 or 15 years earlier, a Bruiser Brody, a Stan Hansen, these giant athletes who, are significantly bigger than me, significantly more athletic than me, these guys would have chewed me up and spat me out. And EPW have made some incredible omelettes over the years, but we cracked a lot of eggs too, mate. And that's been something that, has informed me now as a coach, both on a personal side for training and strength and conditioning, but also leading a group of young men in footy coaching, and the way I approach my training at wrestling as well. It is very much more about maximising what we can get out of the person.
And what made you realise that was a better leadership approach?
Interesting. I think it was realising that I wasn't being my authentic self in the way that I was approaching training. That I am someone who, and again, not in a particularly awful way, but I did experience some bullying at high school, and I was quite protected by my stepdad and my brother from My stepdad didn't want me playing any physical sports, kind of hilarious where I ended up in the end, in a place where we just allow concussions to happen to us and we push on through. So pretty hilarious and ironic where I ended up. But I think I've completely lost my train of thought. Where were we?
Well, you're talking about there's a point in time where you changed your leadership style.
Sure. Yes. Okay.
And really, I'm asking, what drove that change?
Yep. I think it was looking out at both perhaps the way I was perceived by certain people, and I've got to say I've had some great people around me over the years, some wonderful friends who are definitely not enablers and are people who will call me out on my bullshit and ask the right questions of me, not always directly, sometimes just by being themselves, and me realizing, this is not who I am, and I think probably looking at that style of wrestling trainer and leader and realizing that that's not actually who I am as a person, and getting more comfortable with my role in wrestling and who I was as a human being. So I think it was honestly just growing up that a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid should not be leading a group of people and telling people how they should behave in professional wrestling, or probably in any other context as well, because I don't know that a 21-year-old is necessarily mature enough and knows themselves well enough to lead. I'm sure there are some amazing exceptions to the rule, but I think for the most part, I personally lacked the self-awareness and the self-development to be the leader that I hope I am now.
And now you're saying, like I say, we started this interview by noting that we're at the Empire Ballpark, where you bring a lot of young people along to make them the best version of themselves. Why does that appeal to you?
I suppose in some way, I was very unfortunate to lose a very dear friend, maybe a year before EPW started, which was very much the catalyst for me chasing professional wrestling. It's something I wanted to do from the time I was 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, and I first saw The Ultimate Warrior and the Rockers and all of these larger-than-life characters, and that's what I wanted to do, and to have spent a lifetime being told you could never do that, you could never do that. And I can understand why people would be telling me that at that given time. There was no pathway for me to go through. I was a tiny, scrawny little kid in high school as well, so I wasn't a particularly big kid. I can understand why people were telling me that in hindsight, but not being able to chase the things that I wanted, and I think that made me a pretty bitter and angry kid for quite some time. And I suppose now I am trying to help be the understanding leader that I probably needed at that time. And that, again, it's not necessarily about reaching an end goal or becoming a certain person. I know that is how we frame goals for the most part, is, a young kid who is a baseballer and wants to play in the MLB. That's where they imagine themselves. As a kid growing up, I imagined myself wrestling at WrestleMania. You see the elite, you see the best, and that's where you imagine yourself. But I think understanding now that it is, and this is probably the most appropriate time too, it's not what you become, it's who you become. And the journey is so important, and to be able to arm young people with the right tools to be able to approach how they're going to go about this journey, for them to understand that they do need some understanding and care for themselves, even when they are pushing for things that are physically and mentally demanding. To be able to get the best out of themselves, they do need to offer themselves some kindness and some understanding, and sometimes you do need to rest. And yeah, of course, grind mentality is super important. If you want to be what the next person wants to be, then you have to push as hard as the other person does as well. You have to be willing to work more than your average person is going to want to work or be able to work. But that doesn't mean that you can't offer yourself some compassion and kindness along the way. And that is something that really resonates with me now. Is I just want to see these kids be kinder to themselves than I was to myself and many others along the way.
So you remember being told all this time ago, 24 years ago, no doubt before then as well, you'll never be a wrestler, Dave.
Yeah.
And 24 years later, we're looking at this weekend, the biggest weekend in Perth professional wrestling. Obviously the Fed's here on the Friday, Saturday and the Monday, but we get to perform as Explosive Pro Wrestling on the Sunday at an incredible venue, Willetton Stadium, in front of it's going to be nearly 1,000 people, if not more than that. How does that sit with you?
It's remarkable, right?
Yeah, it is.
Who would have ever thought that a major WWE show would be taking place in our neck of the woods? We grow up being told Perth's the most isolated capital city in the world, and it definitely feels like that sometimes. You feel like the world barely knows we exist. You know, the state government's done an amazing job getting all these major events to Perth over the last 5 or so years, and it feels like we're, as a city, we're finally getting some international recognition. But as a performer, I've got friends who are amazing, world-class musicians who have never been able to break out of Perth, have never even been able to crack the eastern states particularly, because we do feel like we are ignored out here. For us to be the center of the wrestling universe, even just for a short 96 hours, is amazing, and it's something I never would have thought of. The idea that you could be a committed professional wrestler who wrestles for a local Perth organisation, and that the eyes of the world would be on our city is something I definitely couldn't have imagined 24 years ago.
You said growing up, like we all do, you want to main event WrestleMania.
Sure.
But the peak of your career, I mean, you've had some amazing highlights over the last 20 odd years. But this weekend, you're gonna face the Don in front of that big crowd. But on the other show for the WWE, you got, say, someone that wrestled for us at the exact same show for EBW last year. You've got Delta, now Zarya.
Yep.
We know that Jonah Rock, now Bronson Reed, will be wrestling for WWE as well.
Yep.
How does that sit with you? I guess what I'm asking is, are you content with your career in wrestling?
Yes. I know I hesitated. The answer is yes. I suppose I'm thinking more about satisfaction doesn't really come into this equation for me, because wrestling has given me more than I ever thought I deserved when I stepped foot through the door. And yes, you have dreams and you have ambitions, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think my dreams were never anything more than dreams. That I suffered a lot from imposter syndrome. I suffered a lot from self-doubt, particularly over my first 10 years of wrestling. And I'm forever an optimist. And I don't know how much that clouds me saying that I'm satisfied. Because I know there are times where I watch major sporting events like the AFL Grand Final or like a big wrestling show, and at the end of it, I'm so fueled by the passion of seeing people achieve on this level, but then I also have to come to grips with the fact that I will never achieve on the level that these people have, and that sometimes leaves me feeling a little bit hollow, and it's something I've very much had to come to grips with this year. And I in a post earlier this year, I likened it more to the football world, because that's probably where I've felt it more this year, is watching Michael Walters and Nat Fyfe retire from our beloved Fremantle Dockers, mate. But seeing that and realising when you start out in wrestling, you want to, and I'm sure this goes for anybody starting out, but you want to change the world. you want the world to recognize you and celebrate you and love you and adore you. It's, you know, I think there are a lot of people who get involved in wrestling because in some way there is some sort of need for love and attention that maybe we've lacked throughout our lives, or we feel that we've lacked. And to, you know, to get to the end of the journey, and for me to be retiring in the same year that John Cena's retiring and Hiroshi Tanahashi's retiring, and on a local level, you know, Nat Fyfe and Michael Walters, and realizing every single one of these men has made a greater impact on the world than I ever will. And I'm okay with that. And the older I've gotten, the more I've focused on trying to affect the things around me that I actually can affect. So I made the decision many years ago. And again, this is when you ask, am I satisfied? I don't know. I am, because I love my life. And everything that I've chosen to do or not do has led me to where I am. And I'm a great believer in, if you change the dial even just a little bit, maybe your life turns out a different way. And, you know, I love my wife, I love my kids, I love my friends, I love my life. I love what I do, and I wouldn't want to change any of that. But if you're asking me, did I achieve what I thought Dave on day one dreamt of? No, but I'm not sure I ever really chased the dream, because I never really believed that I could be that guy. I think even from day one, my focus was, can I help someone else get there? And again, I don't know whether that's imposter syndrome, whether that's not believing in myself enough, or if just that's who I am as a person. And I want to be there to support and help other people and help them achieve their dreams. And to be honest, that is where I am now as a coach. My role is not to be in the forefront and to have all the attention and focus on me, but rather to try and push people to greatness and try and help them maximize their potential.
Well, I guess if that's the measure you've got for yourself, it's tick, 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 mate, because you've brought so many people along, not just in wrestling. I mean, we can keep listing names. I've already said a few. We won't just keep name dropping. We know how many people have walked through the doors at EPW and have achieved at the highest level. But it's outside of wrestling as well. This is kind of where we started this conversation about where you've taken it. Mm-hmm. It's, helping out people at the ballpark. I know, me personally, it's not about me, but certainly you've helped me incredibly, and that's a matter for another time. But if that's where your contentment comes from, then it's richly, that contentment's well earned and richly deserved, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
But there's one thing I know that does grate you from a wrestling point of view, and it's where we come back to EPW this Sunday. This is your house. You've got your last match ever against the Don, Michael Morleone. Now, when I got word that this might have been your last year with EPW, there's only one name that came to my mind who I wanted to see you wrestle, and it is the Don, someone you've never managed to beat in all these years of wrestling. And you know how much time I've got for the Don, because I picked him. In my time with EPW, I think he's been the greatest EPW champion of our time. But you've never managed to beat him.
No.
David Storm. So what's going to be different on Sunday?
I don't know that anything's going to be different on Sunday. I don't know that anything's going to be different. I'm not someone who is of this unshakable belief in myself that everything is just meant to end like a beautiful fairy tale. If this was a fairy tale, I'd be wrestling James Hartness for the EPW Championship, and I would be going out on top. I set myself the goal this year of winning the EPW Tag Team titles with Bruno, and I failed. Life is not a fairy tale, and there are no guarantees, and nobody is assured a happy ending, mate, particularly in professional wrestling and in combat sports, or in sports in general. I just had to watch Nat Fyfe get chaired off the Oval after a brutal loss in an elimination final that should have, his career should have gone on. It had the potential to go on, and it just came to a screeching halt. And that self-doubt is still there. I'm not assured anything because of 24 years in this industry. I'm not assured anything because I'm David Storm. I'm not assured anything. But I have nothing left to prove except to myself. And I have shown up and fought this man over and over and over again, and I have always fallen short. And that doesn't sit right with me. And I just want one more chance with nothing to lose and no tomorrows, to write this, just to write a happy ending in an industry that doesn't have happy endings. I just want that one chance to show that I am good enough.
You'll get that one chance on Sunday. David Storm, it's been an absolute honour being able to sit down with you. Love you, mate. Thank you so much.
Love you too, man. Thank you.